The Interior Castle. Teresa de Avila, 6 mentions. The mentions overview. First, start to pray. Second, persevere in prayer. Third, avoid sin. Fourth, prayer of quiet. And fifth, you may experience prayer of union. Chapter 1. When the Lord begins to grant the soul greater favors, it has also to endure greater trials. The soul is now completely determined to take no other spouse, but the spouse disregards its yearnings. This greatest of all blessings should be won by the soul at some cost to itself. Oh my God, how great are the trials which the soul will suffer, both within and without, before it enters the 7th mansion. Then people whom she had thought her friends abandon her, and it is they who say she's going to perdition, and obviously being deluded that this is the devil's work. To be well spoken of is only one trial more and a worse one than those already mentioned. People will speak well of others as readily as ill. The Lord is also in the habit of sending most grievous infirmities. This is much greater trial, especially if the pains are severe. I think they are the greatest earthly trials that exist. But oh, when we come to interior sufferings, the torture which it costs us to have to do with a confessor so scrupulous and inexperienced that he thinks nothing safe, he attributes the whole thing to melancholy or the devil. On top of everything else come periods of aridity, during which the soul feels as if it has never known God and never will know Him. Briefly, in this tempest, there is no help for it but to wait upon the mercy of God, who suddenly lifts the whole of this burden from the soul. The soul keeps praising our Lord. The best medicine is to occupy oneself with external affairs and work of charity, and to hope in God's mercy, which never fails those who hope in Him. Chapter 2 treats of several ways in which the Lord awakens the soul. For often, when a person is quite unprepared, he is awakened by His Majesty. The soul is very well aware that it has been called by God. It is conscious of having been most delectably wounded. So powerful is the effect of this upon the soul that it becomes consumed with desire. So clearly conscious it is the presence of God. Chapter 3. When He is pleased to do so, God speaks to the soul. This awakening of the soul is effected by means of locutions. Some of them seem to come from without, others from innermost depths of the soul, others completely outside the soul. Sometimes this may be a fancy. Chapter 4 treats of occasions when God suspends the soul in prayer by means of rapture or ecstasy or trance. Chapter 5 gives an example of how God exalts the soul through flights of the Spirit. Chapter 6 describes one effect of the prayer referred to it in the last chapter. Having won such favors, it has the keenest longings for death, begs God to take it out of this exile. Chapter 7 treats of the kind of grief felt for the sins by the soul to whom God grants the favors. Practice keeping in mind the humanity of our Lord. Chapter 8 treats of the way in which God communicates Himself to the soul through intellectual visions. Chapter 9 treats of the way in which the Lord communicates Himself to the soul through imaginary visions. Be careful. Chapter 10 speaks of other favors which God grants. So here we are in a 6th mention. Teresa talks about numerous trials she undergoes here. She talks about being abandoned by her best friends. She's ridiculed. And she says even praises that people make, or comments that praise her, give her some discomfort and pain. She feels anything that she's able to do good, any good in her life, is from God, and only He deserves praises. She also describes physical pains, excruciating pains she experiences, and she even says for years. Teresa ends the chapter trying to leave instructions on discernment, on visions. She says there's 3 sources. The visions can come from God, they can come from yourself, your own imagination, or they could come from the enemy. And so she leaves very detailed instructions on how to discern between the 3. I'll see you in the 7th mention. Link to the audiobook is in the descriptions below.